You've been fed a lie about what strength looks like. A lie sold to you in movie scenes of screaming matches and dramatic confrontations. A lie whispered by a culture that mistakes noise for conviction and reaction for power. But I am here to tell you that the most profound strength you will ever possess is born not in a roar, but in a profound, deliberate, and unbreakable silence. Have you ever sat alone in the deafening quiet, long after the world has gone to sleep, and felt the full, crushing weight of every word that should have never been spoken to you? The words that landed like stones in the sacred garden of your spirit, leaving craters that you've been trying to fill ever since. Have you ever felt the ghost of a hand on your shoulder, the phantom echo of a voice that conditioned you to flinch, to anticipate the next blow, whether it was made of words or cold indifference? This is more than memory. This is a haunting. You are living in a house haunted by the ghosts of conversations that should have ended differently, of trust that was shattered like priceless china on a concrete floor. Now, have you ever found yourself the sole patron in the private, tortuous cinema of your own mind, replaying the same scenes on a relentless loop? Those moments where you were too kind, too loyal, too forgiving, where you offered the soft, vulnerable underbelly of your compassion. And they looked you in the eye and mistook all of that sacred goodness for a weakness to be exploited. Let that truth land for a second. Let it unravel the knot of confusion in your chest. You are not crazy. You are not too sensitive. You are not overreacting. Your spirit is not a malfunctioning instrument. What you're feeling right now, that slow, simmering, volcanic awakening in the pit of your soul, is not a breakdown. It is a breakthrough. It is your soul finally, rising up against the poison you have been quietly, patiently swallowing for far too long. You have been drinking from a well they poisoned, and your body is now rejecting the toxin. There comes a point, a definitive, non-negotiable line drawn in the sands of your soul when your entire being simply cannot tolerate another fake smile that doesn't reach your eyes. Another manipulative apology, crafted not from remorse, but from a calculated desire to pull you back into the familiar cage. Another draining, one-sided phone call that leaves you spiritually bankrupt, holding a hollow receiver and questioning the very architecture of your own worth. Staring at your own reflection and wondering who the stranger is looking back. You feel it, don't you? That line, you've crossed it. You can feel the tectonic plates of your life shifting beneath your feet. The old ground is no longer stable. And if these words are finding you right now, if your heart is pounding in a solemn, resonant agreement, then I need you to do something for me. I need you to open your eyes. Not just the ones in your head, but the ones in your spirit. Wipe the sleep from them. The long, troubled sleep of self-doubt and people-pleasing. See the world as it is, not as you were told it should be. Here is the radical, life-altering truth you must clutch to your chest like a lifeline. The most powerful, transformative, and liberating thing you will ever do for yourself is not to argue. It is not to fight back on their terms. It is not to exhaust the last reserves of your spirit explaining your side of the story to someone who has already decided, long ago, not to listen. It is this: you go quiet, you go still, and you walk away without saying a single word. You do not need to write that long, emotional message you've been drafting and redrafting in the dark theater of your mind. You do not owe anyone an explanation for choosing your own survival. You do not need their version of closure. Let me be crystalline clear. They had time. They had space. They had 1,001 opportunities, small and large, to do right by you, and they chose, every single time, with conscious or unconscious neglect, to waste them. Now, it is over. The season of their access to you has ended. Toxic people are emotional vampires, and they feed exclusively on your reaction. They are addicts, and your attention is their drug. They are psychological pirates preying on the rich waters of your empathy, and they are master craftsmen at twisting your innate kindness into a weapon of confusion to be used against you. But when you give them nothing, when you become a fortress of silence, draw up the bridge, and become a ghost in your own former life, you become untouchable. You become a phantom they can no longer capture or control. Listen to me, and listen as if your sanity depends on it, because it does. When you stop responding, you begin to heal. When you stop defending your own heart to those who seek to conquer it, you begin to grow. When you stop explaining the beautiful, complex language of your soul to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, that is the moment you take back your peace. That is the moment you reclaim your throne. And that, more than any argument, more than any perfectly crafted comeback, more than any scorched earth retaliation, shakes their entire world to its foundations. Because they expected you to stay lost in the labyrinth of their chaos. They expected you to stay broken, forever playing the role of the frantic repair person, trying to fix what they kept gleefully breaking. They invested in your pain. But now, you have chosen something they never saw coming. You have chosen the one move they cannot counter. You have chosen to be done. There is something so deeply misunderstood about silence in a world that worships noise, a world that equates volume with value. Most people are conditioned to believe that silence means you've lost. That if you're quiet, you must be powerless, defeated, that you've surrendered the battlefield. But here's the secret that life only whispers to you when you're on your knees, ready to listen with your soul and not just your ears. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is not vacuum. Silence is control. It is strength wearing a disguise. It is the ultimate, elegant power move in a game you no longer wish to play. Think about that. Really think about it. Anyone can yell. Anyone can scream and react and fire back with venomous words. That is easy. That is a knee-jerk reflex, a primal spasm. But to stand calmly, rooted like an ancient oak, in the eye of the hurricane they are spinning round you. To have every reason in the world to explode, to justify, to defend your honor. And instead, from a place of profound inner sovereignty, you choose peace. That is not easy. That is a choice. And that choice is the very essence of real, unshakable strength. You know it's true, right? In the marrow of your bones, you know. You felt the sickening drain after the pointless argument, the hollow emptiness after you've handed over your precious energy to someone who treated it as a disposable resource. Toxic people are terrified of true, sustained silence because it strips them of their only weapon, their ability to manipulate the narrative. If they don't know what you're thinking, if they can't grab hold of your words and twist them into unrecognizable shapes, if you give them absolutely nothing, no anger, no sadness, no confusion to work with, your silence becomes a mirror, a vast, cold, unforgiving mirror. It forces them to sit alone in the deafening echo of their own noise, their own manufactured drama. And that pure, unadulterated reflection of their own emptiness terrifies them more than any insult ever could. Because your silence speaks a language they never wanted to learn. It says, I have outgrown your game. The board is gone. The pieces are scattered. And the moment you stop playing, they are left alone in an empty room. And they stop winning by default. Ask yourself, what have most of your arguments with these people truly solved? Have they ever led to a genuine, lasting resolution? Or have they simply been cyclical, draining rituals that left you feeling more alone than before. Let me be unequivocally clear. Most toxic people are emotional parasites. They do not seek peace. They seek a reaction, any reaction. They are like children poking a wild animal with a stick, desperate to see it snarl, to prove it was wild all along. They are archaeologists of anguish, dedicated to finding your breaking point, because your breaking point is the coordinates to your power, and they want to claim it for themselves. The very second you raise your voice, you hand them a trophy. The moment you start explaining the intricate map of your heart to someone who has already decided to get lost, you are handing them your piece on a silver platter. You are doing their work for them, and they enjoy it. They relish the chaos. They become the director, the playwright, and the lead actor in a drama where your only role is to be the unhinged antagonist. They master the art of turning the story upside down, making you look like the unstable one, the problem that needs to be managed. But silence is the power outage in their theater. It blocks every single route. It deadens every manipulative path. They cannot twist what you did not say. They cannot bait you if you do not recognize the hook. They cannot play chess if you have taken your pieces and walked away from the board. When you master silence, you are not just avoiding a fight. You are protecting your peace and taking control of the entire psychological battlefield. You are changing the very nature of the war from attrition to emancipation. You no longer need to play defense on their terms. You simply walk away. And you leave them swinging at shadows, fighting with a ghost, shouting into a void that only answers with their own echo. That is why this strategy is so devastatingly effective. It physically, emotionally, and spiritually removes you from their chaotic ecosystem. It disconnects you from their toxic frequency. It performs a sacred surgery, separating your soul from their drama. And when there is no more fuel left, when you stop feeding the beast with your attention and your anguish, their fire dies. It sputters and chokes on its own smoke. Silence, you will learn, reveals more about people than a lifetime of their words ever will. Become a scientist of stillness. Watch how they behave when you do not react. Notice the panic, the confusion, the frantic energy that sets in when you no longer explain yourself, when you revoke their access to your inner world. That is when the mask begins to slip. That is when the carefully constructed facade cracks, and you see who they really are. Unmasked and desperate, a small child in a tyrant's costume. They will call you cold. They will tell others you are heartless. They will claim you don't care, that you've changed for the worse. But translate their words, and what they are really saying is, I can no longer control you. My favorite toy is broken, and that is not your burden to carry. That is their truth being exposed under the blinding and forgiving light of your stillness. Your silence becomes a diagnostic tool. It reveals everything, not about you, but about them. Their need for control, their fragility, their dependence on your energy. You no longer try to prove your worth to a jury that was never impartial. You no longer beg to be understood by someone who speaks only the language of manipulation. You simply become still. You become a deep, calm lake. And in that profound stillness, something miraculous inside you begins to grow. You begin to mature in ways that conflict never allowed. You begin to rise above the noise, to a higher altitude where the air is clear and they can no longer reach you, their voices faint and insignificant below. If this is speaking to the part of you that is bone tired of the fights, hit subscribe. Because what comes next is how you make this transformation permanent. This is where theory becomes practice. This is where you stop just reading about freedom and you start architecting it with your own hands. This is where you stop just reading and you start becoming. There is a quiet, formidable kind of power in becoming unreachable. It's not about being arrogant, rude, or cold. It's about your internal energy becoming a sacred, sovereign space, a nation with borders, and not everyone gets a visa to enter. Some don't even get a passport. Think about that for a moment. Your spirit is a country. Who deserves citizenship? When your silence transforms from a tactic into a boundary, you start to protect your soul in ways that words, by their very nature, never could. Words can be argued with. Words can be dissected, misinterpreted, and twisted. But the boundary held in a steady, consistent silence, it's a force field. It is a palpable energy that says stop without a sound. Not everyone deserves to hear your voice. Not every thought in your head needs to be translated into speech for their consumption. Just because someone knows your name, just because they shared a chapter of your life, does not mean they've earned a permanent, all-access pass to your emotional world. Some people are meant to be footnotes, not main characters. Silence becomes the way you reclaim your strength without lifting a single finger. It is the ultimate economy of energy. Because every time you try to explain yourself to justify your feelings to someone who has already tried and convicted you in the court of their own mind, you are pouring your precious life force into a cup with a hole in the bottom. It is a ritual of self-erasure. You know the feeling, don't you? That soul-deep exhaustion that sleep cannot cure. The heavy blanket of despair after you've offered your truth and had it handed back to you, crumpled and unused. Every time you stand at the gate of your own being defending your boundaries to someone whose sole purpose is to violate them, you end up drained, questioning your own reality, feeling the ground turn to sand beneath your feet. But when you choose to remain silent, you keep your energy intact. You become a closed, self-sustaining system. Your power recirculates within you, building, compounding. This isn't about ignoring the truth or living in denial. It's about the ultimate act of preserving your very well-being. It is spiritual survival. Some battles are not worth the armor. Some victories are found not in winning the argument, but in your majestic, sovereign refusal to even engage. The greatest win is recognizing a fight that would only diminish you and choosing to bypass it entirely. Your energy is not a public park, open for all to trample and litter. It is a private, walled garden, a sanctuary for only the most cherished guests. Stop offering it to people who treat you like a challenge to be conquered, a puzzle to be solved, a mountain to be climbed just so they can plant their flag at your summit. You do not have to prove your worth. You are not on trial. You do not have to explain your piece. Its very existence is its own justification. Let your silence say everything. Let it be the final, unanswerable statement. People will push. They will provoke. They will send the "you okay?" texts at midnight, the cryptic messages designed to lure you back into the maze. They will use nostalgia as a weapon, reminding you of the good times to make you forget the price you paid for them. The more grounded, the more immovable you become in your silence, the harder others will try to shake you. Especially those who thrived on your reactions, who built their identity on your response. They cannot stand being shut out. It is an existential crisis for them. Ignoring them doesn't just frustrate them, it exposes them. It reveals the flimsy scaffolding of their own ego, which was propped up by your attention. That's when the desperate and coordinated outreach begins. The sudden, nostalgic messages from out of the blue. The phone calls from unknown numbers, a digital version of tapping on your window in the rain. The guilt trips dressed as concern, the false, flowery apologies that are really just hooks disguised as roses. They will say they miss you, but let's be beautifully real. They don't miss you. They miss the grip they had on the reins of your emotions. They miss the emotional pull, the dopamine hit of your engagement. They miss the version of you who jumped to explain every emotion, who pleaded to be understood, who offered endless second chances like a gambler believing the next hand will change everything. But the version of you who has gone silent, the one who has calmly, irrevocably revoked their access, that version unsettles them to their core. It is an unsolvable equation, a locked door where there was once an open one, because now they're locked out. Now, they have nothing to twist, nothing to use against you, no raw material for their drama. They are storytellers with no story. Your silence becomes both your shield and your sword. It is your passive protection and your active strength, all in one elegant, potent package. Not everyone is entitled to your emotions. They are not public property. Let that truth settle deep in your bones until it becomes part of your skeletal structure. Just because someone shared a chapter of your life does not mean they owed your heart in perpetuity. Just because someone once showed up for you in a moment of need does not give them a lifetime license to tear you down when it suits them. A past credit does not justify present abuse. Silence draws the boundary they cannot cross, cannot negotiate, cannot dismantle with words. It says, more clearly than any shouted ultimatum ever could, that your peace is no longer up for negotiation. It is off the table. The marketplace of your soul is closed. And when you hold that silence consistently, when you stop making exceptions for the people who once hurt you, when you stop allowing just this once to become always again, you prove, to yourself most of all, that you have changed. The core code of your being has been rewritten. You are not participating anymore. You have resigned from the drama. You have turned in your badge. The moment you stop consciously choosing their chaos and start consciously, deliberately choosing your calm, that is the precise moment when the real, deep, cellular healing begins. Everything in your universe starts to shift, to reorient toward a new magnetic north, your own well-being. You begin to attract more peace, because you have become a vessel for it. You notice how light you feel in the morning, the literal absence of a weight you had grown so accustomed to carrying that you thought it was a part of your body. You finally understand, with terrifying and liberating clarity, just how heavy their presence truly was in your atmosphere. You have been carrying a ghost, and you have finally set it down. Silence is not weakness. It is strength in its most grounded, unshakable, elemental form. It is not a lack of action. It is a conscious, powerful, deliberate decision. It is an action of being. It says to the world, I am no longer afraid to be by myself. I am no longer afraid of the quiet. I am no longer afraid to release what no longer fits, even if I have held it for a lifetime. You would rather walk alone in peace than sit surrounded by noise and conflict, by the hollow laughter of false companionship. That is the fertile, rich ground where true growth takes root. That is where you begin to hear your own voice again, faint at first, like a radio signal from a far-off star. Not the voice that was always explaining, always apologizing, always performing for an audience that never applauded, but the one that simply, quietly, knows its worth. The voice that does not need to be heard to know that it is valid. Because silence does not mean you have nothing to say. It means you are saving your words for the right people. People who will listen not to reply, but to understand. People who respect the gift of your vulnerability. People who have earned the privilege of your truth by demonstrating their own. And that single, seismic shift in allocation changes everything. Your relationships transform, because you are no longer attracting predators who sense a willing prey. Your standards rise, because you are no longer desperate for any form of attention. Your perspective clears, like a fog lifting from a landscape, revealing the true lay of the land. You no longer crave understanding from people who never tried to understand you. You no longer chase the approval of those who never valued you. The hunger for external validation is replaced by the feast of self-acceptance. You realize, in a flash of stunning clarity, that the only validation that truly matters, the only one that can ever nourish you, is the validation you give yourself. And that is the precise coordinates where true healing begins. The more you evolve, the quieter you become internally. Not out of fear, not out of defeat, but out of a profound, hard-won clarity. The clarity that comes from having seen the other side of the mountain. You have seen what chaos invites into your life. You have felt the exact toll that drama takes on your spirit, your health, your joy. You have carried the dead weight of toxic energy, and now you choose to put it down. You simply decide to unclench your hands and let it fall. You release it not with anger, not with a final, dramatic shout, but with a silent, decisive breath. An exhale that lasts for days, weeks, a lifetime. That is how cycles are broken. Not with a bang, but with a whisper. That is how new paths open before you, paths you never knew existed. Not with final words or dramatic, door-slamming exits, but with a series of quiet, daily, courageous decisions. You stop engaging. You stop replying. You stop fighting for a place at a table that was always starving your soul, at a banquet where you were the main course. And in doing so, you create space. Glorious, life-giving, expansive space. The space that their noise and need had occupied for so long. Space for better, richer, more meaningful conversations. Space for real, mutual, heart-to-heart connection. Space for your healing to finally stretch its limbs and breathe deeply, for the first time in years. That is what silence gives you. Not emptiness, but room to grow. Room for your true self to finally stand up to its full height. You do not need to announce your transformation with a billboard or a bullhorn. Your silence makes it undeniable. Your peaceful presence becomes the evidence. Let your silence be your only message. Let the new, firm boundaries you have built speak on your behalf, louder than any manifesto. You are no longer the person who used to argue just to feel heard, who mistook conflict for passion. No longer the one who cried just to be seen, who believed pain was the price of connection. You have grown. You have changed. You have been forged in a fire you did not choose, but from which you have emerged, not as ash, but as steel. You have come to understand, on a cellular level, in the very DNA of your spirit, that not everyone deserves access to your time, your energy, or your heart. These are sacred resources, and you are their guardian. And now, when someone tries to return, bearing the same old chaos like a familiar, tattered gift, they are met with nothing. No reaction. No anger. No explanations. No frantic energy. Just a profound, peaceful, impenetrable silence. And that silence shakes them in a way your rage, your tears, your most eloquent pleas never could. It is not your fury that breaks the pattern. It is your unassailable calm. Not your words, but your palpable distance. Not your pain, but your undeniable, visible progress. Because you are done. You are done playing their game on a board that was always rigged. You have left the casino. In a world addicted to noise and external attention, your serene silence becomes your quietest, most powerful revolution. So, the next time someone tries to drag you back into their drama, to pull you onto their stage, do not take the bait. Do not justify your position. Do not respond to the provocation. Just stay still. Stay silent. Become a monument to your own peace. Let them talk to the void. Let them wrestle with your absence, with the ghost of who you used to be. Let them perform their play to an empty house, because the moment you realize, in the very core of your being, that your silence holds more power, more potency, more unassailable truth than any carefully crafted comeback. You rise entirely beyond their reach. You ascend to a plane they cannot access. You do not need closure from the person who shattered you. You do not need validation from the ones who doubted you. You do not have to raise your voice, to make yourself bigger or louder, to prove your value to anyone. Your peace now speaks for itself. It is a living testament. And once you learn to protect that peace with the fierce and wavering power of silence, those who once held the power to destroy you will find that their keys no longer fit the locks. They will never be able to touch you again. But this is where most people fail. They forget the one thing that gives silence its true, unbreakable power. They believe the silence is about the other person. It is not. You owe no one closure. Let that truth settle not just in your mind, but in your bones. Let it dissolve the last chains of obligation you never asked to wear, the chains that have rubbed your spirit raw. You do not owe it to the person who betrayed your trust, who treated your heart like a temporary shelter on their stormy journey. You do not owe explanations to those who stood on the riverbank and watched you struggle in the current, and then asked you why you were wet. For too long, we've been sold a beautiful, dangerous lie that every ending needs a conversation, that healing requires a handshake from the very person who held the knife. We are taught that maturity is a neatly wrapped package with a mutual understanding bow. But life is not a screenplay. It is messy, raw, and often brutally unfair. Some people break you, and then have the audacity to expect a comforting goodbye, a soothing balm for their own conscience. They wound you deeply, and then they wait, with an expectant look, for you to whisper, "It's okay. I understand. I forgive you, but this time you don't. You don't say it, because it's not true. And your integrity now matters more than their comfort. You do not need to sit face to face with the one who damaged your spirit, across the table in a quiet cafe, just to hand them a final gift of your peace. You do not need to offer them solace for the destruction they caused. Sometimes the most powerful, the most dignified, the most self-forming closure is no closure at all. Sometimes it is the sound of you walking away, your footsteps the only period at the end of the sentence. No ellipsis, no question mark, a period. They will call it cold. They will call it harsh. They will label you the villain of their story because you refuse to play the victim in your own. But where was their concern for kindness when their words were carving canyons in your soul? Where was their desire for clarity, for closure, when they were ghosting your heart, using your loyalty as a currency, lying to your face while looking you in the eye? They held all the control then. They held the reins, and they enjoyed the ride. And now that you have finally, courageously, taken your power back, now that you are the one holding the reins of your own life, they come circling back, asking for one last talk, for clarity. Do not be misled. Do not let their soft words and forks contrite tones fool you. They do not want healing. They want access. They want a backstage pass to your life again. They want to pull you back into their gravitational orbit for one more spin, one more drama. If you give them the conversation they so earnestly crave, they will not use it to suture the wound. They will use it to reopen it, to probe it, to see if it still bleeds for them. Closure is not a dialogue. It is not a negotiation. It is a decision. A sovereign, personal, unilateral decision. It is that quiet, potent moment in the dead of night or in the stark, honest light of morning when you look your own reflection in the eye and you say with a finality that echoes through your entire being, this ends here. I deserve more. I am worth more. No explanations. No emotional, drawn-out send-offs. No one-sided understanding where you do all the emotional labor. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself distance. You owe yourself the sacred, uninterrupted space to rebuild yourself from the foundation up. But you do not owe the people who hurt you a front row seat to your recovery. They do not get to be the audience for your renaissance. They do not get to witness the magnificent strength of your spirit if they turned away from your struggle. They do not get another chance, under the flimsy guise of ending things right, to damage you all over again. Your closure is not a community activity. It is a solo pilgrimage into the heart of your own healing. If this truth is rewriting the story you tell yourself, if it is breaking locks you thought were permanent, then share this with one person who you know needs to hear it. Be the permission slip they never received. Be the mirror that reflects their own strength back to them. Sometimes, the most profound closure comes through text messages that never get a reply. Through phone numbers that get blocked without drama. Through the quiet, unshakable moment where you're folding laundry or driving to work, and you simply say to yourself, with a calm that feels like a superpower, that was enough. I have had enough. Closure is not about what they want. It is not about giving them a narrative they can live with. It is about what you need to live. Truly live. And sometimes, what you need is not another conversation, another cycle of hope and disappointment. Sometimes, what you need is to say nothing, to offer no explanation, and to just keep walking forward, one foot in front of the other, into a future that is yours and yours alone. You are not cold for choosing to protect your peace. You are not wrong for going silent, for building a wall around your garden so you can finally tend to your own flowers. That is called wisdom. That is called maturity. That is called growing into someone who no longer chases chaos in a misguided attempt to feel complete, who no longer mistakes drama for passion. Some people simply do not deserve your goodbye. A goodbye is a privilege, an honor bestowed upon those who valued your presence. They only deserve the version of you who tried, the one who showed up with an open heart. And they lost that version. Through their own actions, they forfeited that gift. Let them sit with that. Let them sit in the silent consequence of their own behavior. That is no longer your concern. You have already spent too many nights, too many precious hours of your one wild life, going over the words you never got to say. Too many mornings staring at the ceiling, wondering what you could have done differently. What magic combination of words would have made them see you, value you, love you correctly? But healing does not come from more words. It does not come from rehearsing the past. It comes from a radical, gutsy acceptance of what is. Right here, right now. Accepting that they knew exactly what they were doing. Maybe not in a grand, malicious scheme, but in 1,000 small choices that prioritized their ego over your spirit. Accepting that the apology you have been waiting for may never come, and that you can still be whole without it. Accepting that closure might never be offered from their hands, and that you are powerful enough to build your own. And being at a profound, unshakable peace with that anyway. That is not surrender. That is victory. It is the ultimate victory, because it is a victory over your own need for external resolution. When you finally, truly let go of the childish belief that someone else needs to hand you the key to your own cage, you become powerful in a way that cannot be shaken, cannot be argued with, cannot be taken away. Because now, you are the locksmith. You hold the tools. You understand the mechanism. And you are free. You no longer wait for an apology that may be too little, too late. You no longer wait for answers to questions that have grown stale. You become the answer. You embody the resolution. You are the living, breathing, walking declaration that the past is over and a new day has begun. And nothing in this world, no force of man or nature, is stronger than that. So let them talk. Let them gossip and spin their tales in the echo chamber of their own projections. Let them stir their pots in a kitchen you no longer eat in. Their words are seeds planted in barren soil. They cannot harm you. You are not who you once were. You are not the person who gave too much, who stayed too long in the burning building, who shrank themselves to fit into spaces that were always too small, too dark, too confining. That version of you has been honorably discharged. Their tour of duty in the war for your soul is over. They are retired, with full benefits of peace and self-respect. You have outgrown the games, the inconsistencies, the broken promises written on water. You have outgrown the emotional tug-of-war that left your hands rope-burned and your heart frayed. You have outgrown a version of love that demanded you lose yourself, your voice, your sanity, just to keep it close. You look in the mirror now and you no longer see someone begging to be chosen, pleading to be seen. You see someone who chooses themselves, with a clarity that is terrifying, with a confidence that is quiet and deep, with a quiet fire of self-worth that will never, ever be extinguished. This is your legacy now. A life built not on the shifting sand of others' approval, but on the unshakable foundation of your own inherent worth. A life where your peace is the priority, your joy is the purpose, and your freedom is the ultimate goal. You are not meant to live in survival mode, constantly ducking and weaving. You were not born to just get by, to simply endure the passing of days. You were born to rise, to thrive, to stand in your truth with a peace that becomes your greatest rebellion, your most eloquent speech, your most powerful contribution to a noisy world. So let this be the moment you grant yourself the one thing you've been waiting for someone else to give you: permission. Permission to walk away, without a backward glance. Permission to be done, definitively and without guilt. Permission to protect your beautiful, boundless, brilliant spirit with every fiber of your being. If this felt less like a video and more like a wake-up call for your soul, if it felt like a key turning in a lock you thought was sealed forever, then let this be your first act of defiance. Share it. Tag one person who you know is fighting this battle in the quiet. Be the ripple that becomes a wave for someone else. Be the proof that it is possible. Your story is not over. This is not the end. It is just the beginning of the good part. A new chapter, written in the indelible ink of silence, bound in the tough, beautiful leather of resilience, dedicated to the one who never gave up on you, yourself. You once waited for a sign from the universe, for a burning bush, for a thunderclap to tell you it was time. This is it. The door is open, the path is waiting, sun-drenched and full of promise. Walk in it. Your future self is already there, waiting. And they are so proud of you for finally arriving.